Welcome to the next episode of the Cranky Curmudgeon's Corner. My name is Paul Thomas, and this evening we're going to be talking about reproductive rights. Joining me on the panel is Whitney Brooks, Elizabeth Mount, Kat Emery. Thanks for joining us, folks. The Fourth Amendment of the Constitution states the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. And no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. Okay, that's the quote. There's a lot to consider in that text, but the very first phrase, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, would seem to include women, their bodies, and their reproductive organs contained therein. Do you see any language of the remainder of the Fourth Amendment text that excludes those aspects of the female anatomy I just cited? Whitney, am I missing something here? Or does this very Fourth Amendment give women the right to control their own bodies?
I mean, historically, they've been very selective about who they consider to be people in the Constitution. I mean, 200, however many years ago, I wouldn't be a person. I'd be 3/5 of a person in this country. So probably not even, probably less than that actually, but
it's like an eighth.
Yeah. So I mean, no, but
so what you're saying then is the word persons is the thing that they, or some people still consider to exclude women from that definition of persons.
Yeah, I mean, not just women, but all kinds of people.
Sure.
Yeah.
Women, people of color,
mm-hmm.
Foreigners, you name it. If they're not white, then they're not a person. And that's how it was when they wrote the Constitution.
Right. And I think, I think it's pretty safe to say that when we're talking about the Constitution as it was originally written, when we're talking about people, we're talking about white men who own property. And that's who all the laws apply to. And while we as a nation have come a long way, we still have a long way to go. And I mean, theoretically, it should be pretty cut and dry. Like, people includes all people who are humans, but it's just, the reality is that it's just not that simple, and it's more complicated than that.
Okay, Elizabeth, when you brought up a good point that the word persons as stated in the Constitution really didn't mean to include women. But do you think over time that women have become more qualified to become persons as described here in the Fourth Amendment?
I mean, that's an interesting and debatable point. The Equal Rights Amendment still has not been ratified by a number of states sufficient to add it to the Constitution, despite having been initially passed in, 1976?
No, 64, 65. It was the LBJ that did it.
Thank you.
No, Equal Rights Amendment. Elizabeth's right. It's Equal Rights Amendment. But the thing about that is that they have had the enough states ratify it, but Congress put this arbitrary deadline in that if it wasn't done by 85, then it wouldn't count. But I think once, I think it was Nebraska, it was the last one.
Yeah.
So they do have the 3/4, but because of this arbitrary deadline, which Congress could very easily remove, and we could add the Equal Rights Amendment, but I'm off topic here.
I know. I'm like, so yes, but no, because
it hasn't been
got
ratified.
some weird stuff going on. But But the thing is that this is not about gender. It was not illegal to have an abortion or to cause oneself an abortion when the Constitution was being put into place, when those amendments were being created. Abortions didn't become criminalized anywhere in the US until 1821. And that was as a product of male doctors attempting to move midwifery from a specialized profession dominated by women to a medicalized profession dominated by men. And it wasn't on moral grounds. It was because male doctors had this idea that was probably pushed a lot by the fact that they could make money because people were having babies, but that women simply didn't have the mental capacity to help each other decide when and how to have babies and have them well on their own. You know? Don't worry your pretty little head about a reproductive function that only people with uteruses can do. These male doctors then went on to claim that because men who were doctors were professionals and then therefore inherently not dirty, that they did not need to wash their hands, and caused an epidemic of deaths in childbirth from sepsis, because doctors would go directly from autopsies of cadavers to childbirths. It's a really nasty history if you start reading too much into it. But I want to be clear that abortion was not something that was put into the Constitution as either a right or a prohibition, because it was simply a non-issue. It was not religiously prohibited. It was not legally prohibited on the founding of this country.
Very true historical fact. Okay, Whitney, I just cited the Fourth Amendment there, and you brought out the idea of the persons, but Elizabeth says, and I agree with her completely, that this actually occurred more of a male-dominated medical profession, wanting to make sure that they were getting all the patients, instead of letting the midwives, who were doing a pretty good job, handle the entire reproductive thing, because it was females. And are we back to the patriarchy thing here?
Yes, unequivocally. But
I'm like,
also,
don't worry, we could also get white supremacy involved here.
that's
Very
where I
true,
was
very
heading.
true,
Yep,
right.
that's where I was going, because as a Black person, I'm obligated to bring up white supremacy every chance I get. So, abortion and midwifery bans are absolutely. Sorry, I have an intrusive cat also. She keeps turning off my ring light.
Aw, so good.
My puppy's hiding.
They have a long history in white supremacy also. A lot of those midwives that posed such a threat to male doctors were mostly Black midwives. Male gynecologists claimed that midwifery was like a degrading means of obstetrical care, which I just whatever. But they thought that they should be the only ones who were able to practice this kind of medicine and care. They thought that they were these elite members of like a trained profession, with all these other tools that aren't necessarily necessary, I guess. And modern hospitals, at the time when this was like kind of starting to gain some traction, excluded Black and Indigenous women from practicing within like the hospital, within those institutions. So I mean, I could spend the entire episode talking about the roots of white supremacy in the abortion ban, but
Okay, Kat. We
Yes.
talked about persons, definition of persons, not
Mhm.
really including women. We also talked
That's-
about the history of the medical profession, taking midwifery and trying to put it away so they could
Right.
get all the patients. And so what do you have to say about all this?
Well, reading the whole Fourth Amendment, the one word that clicked in my mind was but upon probable cause. So basically that means even if women are included as persons, okay, in the state of Texas, if you leave the state and go have an abortion in a state that still legalizes it, and you come back to Texas and someone finds out, you can get in, you'll go to jail for having an abortion, even though it was not in the state. It's that but. It says, but upon cause supported by oath or affirmation. So if the law of Texas says you are not allowed to have an abortion and you go to a different state and come back to Texas, they can get you on that because there's that but. There's that probable cause. Well, where did you go? Why are you having these issues? You need to go to a doctor. That's what I saw, and I went, there's that but there. That's what's making this all kind of discombobulated, as well as being, okay, are we a person or what are we? We're property, because women were also considered property, though the man was it, and we just, barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen. We had no laws, we had no rights. We do now, but again, even if we did have that right and we were people, it would still be but with that probable cause, which would probably snag us.
My view is that the Fourth Amendment completely gives you the right to do what you want with your own bodies, but that's just something that they chose to ignore. The politics of abortion gets a lot of energy from the arena of organized religion, particularly the Catholic Church, which also forbids any use of birth control. I'm not the most researched scholar of scripture. We have one here, so we can talk to her later about that. But I don't ever recall hearing any passages mentioning abortion or birth control. So is it safe to conclude that the Catholic and evangelical opponents to abortion and birth control came up with this position on their own with no scriptural reference to justify it?
Yeah.
Elizabeth, is this something that they just came up on their own, or is it something, I mean, you referred to earlier.
Yeah, this is one of those things where if you go looking for justifications in the Bible, you will find justifications in the Bible, because a lot of the Bible is written in parables and stories. It's meant to be metaphorical. A lot of the Bible is written assuming a context and a culture and a people that is very, very unlike where we live today. But I want to be really clear, based on what is in the Old Testament, abortions are a protected right. The health of living people comes first. And that is generally interpreted in Jewish law to mean not only the physical but also the psychological well-being of a mother comes before anything that is growing inside of her body. This is a specifically Christian thing, and there is nothing in the New Testament, there is nothing said by Jesus or the apostles or anyone else that says, thou shalt not have an abortion.
Right.
That is interpretations on interpretations. And I'm not going to say that there's some magical point at which there is or isn't a spark of soul and I know what it is, but neither does anyone else. We're all making our best guess and doing our best to be moral in response. But you can't make that choice for anyone else. And understand that, and religious people understand that and free will in so many other realms, and we have chosen to make this a realm in which some people really want to impose their theological belief on other people. And I don't think that that's right. I think every person knows best what they can live with around the healthcare decisions they make for their own bodies.
Do you have any discussions with any of your fellow ministers who hold the differing position? And how do those discussions
Yeah.
go?
Because I'm within the Unitarian Universalist Church, I know a lot of ministers who have a lot of different ideas about when life begins and whether or not it is moral to have a decision or to make the decision to have an abortion. I think the thing that sometimes we can agree upon is that every person has to make the choice for themselves. Because if you were told, hey, your kidney is a perfect match for another person anywhere in the world, even if that person were the President of the United States, even if that person were a Nobel Peace Prize winner, even if that person were incredibly important, had been identified as the potential second coming of Christ, you get to make the decision about whether or not to give a kidney. Because that's a major medical decision about your body. Growing a child inside of your body changes everything about your body. Calcium is leached out of your teeth and bones to make the bones of a new person. You can get gestational diabetes. People have organ failure because of complications during the growth of a child. People bleed to death during childbirth. People have pelvic floor issues that never go away after childbirth. Some people lose bladder control for the rest of their lives. This is not a no consequence decision. The decision to gestate a child is a major medical decision. And there are no other circumstances in which people are expected to give up control of basic medical decisions about giving their body to another person.
And after they're dead.
It doesn't matter if that embryo or fetus is another human life or a potential human life. We don't take away people's right to decide when their body gets used to support another person's life.
Okay, Whitney, how does what Elizabeth just said, very profoundly, very eloquently put, does religion or organized religion or the people who run religions really have any right to have any say in that?
No. To answer your original question, so I grew up Catholic. I am no longer, but as I understood it, the reason why things like birth control and abortion were outlawed within the church is because that they went against the natural order of things and against God's will, I guess. I don't know. But that was how I understood it, that there wasn't any, I never heard about any reference to any Bible passage, just like Elizabeth said, just that it was against the natural order of things and how the way things are supposed to be, according to them, I suppose.
So according to them, the natural order is you have sex, you get pregnant.
Yeah.
That's their view of the natural order. Okay, Kat, religion in this issue. How do you weigh in on that?
Well, I've always had the idea that Nobody has the right to tell anybody what to do with their body, including priests, pastors, whatever. The whole thing about religion, especially evangelical religion, deciding that they don't want us to have our own autonomy to our own bodies. They're going to dictate to us what we can and cannot do with our bodies. It is, again, in Whitney, it is actually it's rooted in white supremacy. Jerry Falwell, he did not want desegregation. He wanted the South to stay segregated, and because it wasn't, he went on the warpath of getting into the government as evangelical, the Christian right. And it started in the 50s. And there's actually a sermon that he's talking. It's horrible to hear him say it, but he's just really, really totally racist and didn't care. And when I first saw that, and I looked at the history behind, the evangelical right and the abortion issue, I realized it was just because it was payback. You're not going to do this, so we're going to do that. They want control. This is not about our bodies. They want control of us because we're smarter and we're getting to be stronger and we're getting into positions that they don't want us to be in. So they want to keep us pregnant no matter what. If I die, oh well. And that's what this is the problem. They're not taking into consideration the well-being of the mother or the child. I almost died having my daughter. I almost had a stroke. So yeah. I almost had a stroke. I literally squeezed my poor child because my blood pressure was so bad. And my doctor said, you can never, he said, I'm too high risk. So my fear of getting pregnant was so bad that I wouldn't go near anybody. It was like, don't even look at me because I don't want to go through that. I don't want my daughter to be an orphan. If I had, I think if it had happened, I probably would have had an abortion because, again, I don't want my child to be an orphan. I don't want her to grow up without me. I already have her. You know what I mean? Why am I going to risk myself for something that may or may not happen, or we both die? You know what I mean? So that was a choice right there that I was like, I'm not willing to take that risk. And I will admit to everybody right now, I did. I had an accident. And I had to make that choice. And my daughter was 6 months old. And I'm like, I can't risk this. So I did what I had to do. I didn't want to, but for the greater good of my child that I already had, I didn't want her to be an orphan. I didn't want her to be without her mom. I was the only thing she had. She didn't have a father. She had me. So that alone was enough for me to say, I can't. After that, I was very, very, very careful. New York has a really weird laws about when you can and cannot have your tubes tied. So I was not 35 years old and I did not have more than one child. So I could not have my tubes tied. So after that mishap, I was so terrified of contraception in any kind of way that I just said no. I was celibate because I did not want to go through that again. So it was a really, really, really hard decision, but I made it so that my daughter would have me. And that's why I did it.
Okay, that kind of segues into the next question about the control that Kat mentioned. And I have my own very cynical view as to why the Catholic Church opposes any type of birth control. What do you think is the real reason behind this opposition? Whitney,
Money.
you were Catholic. Why do you think is the real reason why they did not want to have that? It wasn't really the natural order. There was something a little bit more behind it. What do you think it was?
Misogyny. Just,
Yep.
Being in a patriarchal society that wants to control, the lives and bodies of everybody who has a uterus.
So you think it was the desire for the men to be making all the decisions there? That's what you think?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Elizabeth, what do you think the real reason why the Catholic Church wanted to ban birth control as well as abortion?
They said in the chat that they had to go get their computer plug.
So Elizabeth left us?
Yeah, she'll be back.
Okay, Kat,
Yes.
the Catholic Church. Do you think it's just all about control, like you said earlier, or is there some other reason?
It's about control. It's about money, because the more Catholics there are, the more money the Pope is going to get, the more money that the Vatican's going to get. So it's of course misogyny, because we're not allowed to do anything. The rhythm method, really? Okay, that doesn't work. But that's the only Catholic ordained birth control you can have. I was Catholic also, Whitney. So yeah, I am now Lutheran for that reason. But yeah, it is about control. It is about control of what we do, what we say, how we dress, who we talk to, all of it. It is about total and complete control. And they use religion as a fear-mongering way to keep women in their place, because that's what they do. Oh, if you're bad, you get the scarlet A, and you'll get stoned to death for saying something out of turn. So yeah, it's that fear that they keep us, well, they try to keep us under, to bow to their will.